The FOMC meeting happened, and Bitcoin and Ethereum are up, but not for reasons that you might think. And in this video, I'm going to go ahead and go through and break down some of those interesting reasons why we find ourselves with Bitcoin being up, even though the Fed just raised rates by 0.25%. I'm Cody, and I'm here to give you as much information about the crypto market as I can, including Bitcoin analysis, crypto analysis, Ethereum, and chart TA as well. So before we get into this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, be sure to hit that like button, and also be sure to follow me on Twitter for the most up-to-date information. So the most important thing that I need to talk to you guys about is the absolute destruction of banks. Okay, so first we have First Republic, which was bought out recently this week by JP Morgan. First Republic collapsed, and JP Morgan purchased them at an extreme discount. And then today, what we have is the potential collapse of Pacific West, PacWest Bank. Stock plummeting more than 50% on the report of potential sale, and other banks fell as well. Now, what did Bitcoin do in response to that? Bitcoin rallied. Look at this rally come up here. We had this price at about 28,300 off of news that these banks are failing. Bitcoin spikes all the way up to 29,000, hits its head on that resistance there at 29,200 that we've looked at time and time again, and it's come down a little bit after that. Now, what that's telling me is that Bitcoin right now is seen as a hedge to all of this market uncertainty, that it's being used as a hedge against these banks that are failing left and right because of Jerome Powell and his very aggressive Fed policy. So the FOMC happened today. Like I said, they raised rates by 0.25%. And in my opinion, it looks like that's probably going to be the last rate hike that we see. In fact, if we go and take a look at CME's FedWatch tool, what we can see here is that we're at about 500 to 525 bips for the next Fed meeting. So that would mean that for the next Fed meeting that's happening in June, that 91% of pundits or people polled here believe that that's going to remain unchanged from this last Fed meeting. So what that means in practice is that the Fed is done raising rates. And I do believe that's going to wind up being the case, because especially as you see things like PacWest fail and First Republic fail, eventually there's going to be so many banks failing, or you're going to hit a point where the Fed has to give in and they have to stop raising rates, and then they have to wind up cutting rates in order to protect more banks and in order to protect the banking system from collapsing. Now, both of these scenarios, either more banks failing or the Fed deciding that they're going to go ahead and pause and then start cutting rates, are actually bullish for Bitcoin. So if you guys go ahead and we go all the way back here to early March when we started talking about these banking failures in the first place, what we can see here is that we had a significant dump off here in March, and then followed by a massive candle, 26% rise in a single week for Bitcoin. And that was after we've had a huge number of banks failing, starting with SVB and going into Silvergate. And then afterwards we get FRC and now PacWest. So it's going to be a huge catalyst to push Bitcoin higher as people are looking for other banking options in order to make themselves their own banks and not be concerned about these regional banks failing, or even the entire banking system being controlled by a small number of too big to fail banks. Now, I also want to go ahead and talk about the funding rate for Bitcoin. So this is all spot price. We're going to go into derivatives, and we're going to talk about the perpetual futures. So perpetual futures right now are actually looking fairly strong, fairly bullish. You can see here we have this green candle pop up right here. And so what that's telling me right now is that we had a whole bunch of longs just enter into new perpetual futures contracts, and they're betting on a higher Bitcoin price in the future. And this has been kind of a reversal that we saw earlier in the day when it actually went negative. So shorts were in control. Now longs are in control, and longs are betting on a higher price in the future. And if we go ahead and take a look at our addresses with at least one Bitcoin, this is something I've been looking at quite a bit. And as you guys well know, I am basically counting down to the time in which we finally get 1 million addresses that have at least one Bitcoin. We are so close. We are at 995,430. So I think we're actually going to wind up clearing this bar here within the next couple of weeks. We're going to see 1 million addresses own at least one Bitcoin. And that's really important when you consider the distribution of equity, the distribution of Bitcoin. You don't want to have a couple of wallets that own all the Bitcoin. You want to have a distribution that is fair and evenly spread out. Now, the other thing I want to talk about, very important here, is the realized cap hodl waves. And so what we're looking at right now is the supply of Bitcoin and the duration held by wallets. So what we have here is these are broken up into specific little age bands, and I'm looking at everything from about 6 months all the way until about 10 years. So these are basically Bitcoin that have been held in a wallet for 6 months up to about 10 years. And right now, we usually refer to those as long-term holders, LTH, and the long-term holders right now make up about 72% or so of the total Bitcoin supply. We can see, you can go through these individual bands, and you can see how much of each individual band owns. Like, for instance, 2 to 3 years is about 26%, and you go down here to 1 to 2 years, about 29%. So that means that that 29% of Bitcoin wallets have held Bitcoin for 1 to 2 years. So what we have here right now is 72%, which is pretty powerful, because the long-term holders, when they have the supply at least for 155 days or about 6 months, they're much less likely to sell. And so what we're seeing is a large amount of the Bitcoin supply held by long-term holders, which I think is bullish. Next, I want to go ahead and briefly cover Ethereum. So Ethereum also made some pretty big moves today in concert with Bitcoin. And Ethereum, instead of Bitcoin, it actually went up here to about 1900, and that is that level that we've looked at here, that heavy resistance point. It could not pass through that resistance point, but it had a huge move up over the last couple of days, going all the way from here from 1824 all the way up until about 1900. And if Bitcoin sees a large move up, Ethereum's going to see an equally, if not larger, move up as well. And then, of course, we got to talk about Binance Coin. Binance Coin, again, resistance here at 340 has not really moved much. It's kind of more or less gone sideways, and it still has yet to overcome resistance here at 340. And I also want to make sure I talk about your Bitcoin dominance. So we recently talked about Bitcoin dominance, and we said that there's a possibility that we have kind of a double top going on right now with Bitcoin dominance. And so right now, it's kind of tough to say whether or not you have that double top going on with Bitcoin dominance. We have that resistance here at about 49%, and we shall see. I'm still monitoring this. I can't definitively call this a double top or not, but it is entirely possible. If it is a double top, then we'll get a pullback here to about 46, 47%, and we can see some of that money flow to alts as well. Ethereum dominance really hasn't moved much. Again, just kind of moving sideways, so there's not a lot to report on that front. Now, one last thing I want to cover is the dollar index. So the dollar index is the strength of the dollar versus other currencies. And so right now what we're seeing here is that the dollar index has found itself kind of at a low, or very close to a low here, and it's currently at support at about 101. So this level right here, let me go ahead and change that to blue support. So this level right here is currently support for the dollar index, and it's very important to note that if we actually wind up getting it moving, if it moves below this 101 level, that there's not really a lot more support below that level. In fact, if we zoom out here, what we can see is the support level extends all the way out here, and And we've previously called this to be a head and shoulders pattern. Well, if this is a head and shoulders pattern and it plays out like a head and shoulders pattern, you're going to wind up getting the dollar index coming all the way down here to probably about 97 or so, and that would take it all the way back to March of 2022 levels. The dollar index going down is very bullish for Bitcoin because Bitcoin trades inversely to the dollar index. So as the dollar index comes down, Bitcoin's going to go up. So this is something I'm also monitoring very closely. All right, so that's all I've got for you guys today. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this content. Let me know what you guys think about the dollar index and the Bitcoin price, and if you think there's going to be any more bank failures and what that's going to do to Bitcoin. This is Cody the Coin Raptor, and I hope to catch you guys in the next video.